Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined by Derek Brown and Pat Fitzmaurice. Guys, we are talking fantasy takeaways for the NFC South. This is another in our series of divisional takeaways from the season. We are running through each one in their own shorter episode. Today is the NFC South. It starts at the top with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who win yet again. Just went 10-7. Obviously, a weaker division. That 10 wins was enough to take home the crown. Fitz, what was your takeaway from the Bucs this season?
Oh, that Bucky Irving is the absolute truth, and that he warrants first-round consideration in 2025 fantasy drafts, at least in leagues that only require you to start two wide receivers, which pushes up running back value. In those leagues, I think Bucky Irving should sneak into the back end of the first round. He finished with 1,122 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, even though he only averaged 9.2 carries a game over Tampa Bay's first 9 games. Bucky averaged 5.4 yards per carry, had a 55.1 success rate, which is just like off the charts for running backs. Phenomenal numbers. Good as a pass catcher, 47 catches, 392 yards. Rachaad White actually had his best season as a runner by far. And by the end of the season, the Buccaneers had basically benched him and made him Bucky's backup. Bucky was just that good. Like, as good as that 1-2 punch for a while was, I think the Buccaneers realized they were just better off playing Bucky like 75% of the snaps. So the guy's just so much fun to watch. Like, his vision, the way he's able to string together a series of moves and just break ankles, contact balance, he is just a special player. And I really regret fading him because he ran kind of a sluggish 40 at the combine. Like, never again, man. I think the people who, some of the Pac-12 folks, rest in peace, Pac-12, the true believers who saw a lot of Bucky in college, they knew, and they were the ones who benefited, at least in Dynasty. But, man, I'm not going to get cheated out of Bucky Irving shares in redraft next year.
I was going to ask, because he was going as like a late third, early fourth rounder in Dynasty?
Yeah, probably somewhere late second, early third, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I don't even know if I saw him going the second.
If you look
anywhere,
back at Dynasty drafts and see some of the guys who were picked ahead of Bucky Irving, you're just going to be slapping your head.
So is there a lesson to be learned there, Fitz?
Yeah, because I did the same thing with Kyren Williams and didn't learn my lesson. Like, don't fade the undersized backs who run a sluggish 40 time, if they had like really productive college careers, because pay attention to the production and not so much the measurables.
Yeah. Debra, what are you doing with Bucky Irving next year? I mean, when you hear first round consideration, does that seem, oh, wow, that's pretty aggressive in your mind? Or is your initial reaction, yeah, that's about right?
It's about right. I have him right now as RB6. Right now in my overall, he is 14th overall, although you could move him up into the first round. I have no problem with that. Pick whatever name you want to evoke here. Kyren Williams 2.0. I fits another good test case of this, too, is Tyler Algier, a player that did not test really well. But I think the lesson that we need to learn about Bucky Irving is college tackle breaking metrics translate. They might not translate as a strict 1-to-1, but these guys, because if you look at Bucky's profile, his tackle breaking metrics were fantastic. I think it was over the last 2 to maybe 3 seasons. And the same thing could be said for Kyren. It could be said for Tyler Algier. And really, if you could break tackles, you can freaking break tackles, man. Although I will also give a hat tip to the Buccaneers, because the one thing that, when I was looking at Bucky as a prospect that I really hoped in the NFL, if you stuck Bucky Irving in an outside zone scheme, he doesn't have that type of lateral agility to where that would have fit him really well. The Buccaneers said, look, with Rachaad White, it hasn't worked with outside zone and stuff. We are switching to gap and counter and getting downhill, much like the Rams did to fit Kyren Williams. That was fantastic, because Bucky, once you get him into the second level and you get him moving downhill, that's where you see the special runs and the things that he can do into the second level and really, really help himself. you stuck him in an outside zone scheme and you ask him to get lateral and really like that's where I think the shortcomings of the testing and some of the physical stuff could show up. Buccaneers didn't do that, man. But this all comes down to, again, putting a bow on this. Believe in the collegiate tackle breaking metrics. They translate.
If I remember correctly, Fitz, I think Bogman was in on Bucky. Then after the combine was like, you just can't be in on him anymore. And, like we said a few times, like there's the lesson is to kind of be willing to.
Well, and I think we're getting to the point where the NFL is changing its tune about size for these running backs. Like where we were in that, come on, guys. Like in the last 3 to 5 years, we've been pigeonholed. Okay, well, if you're not 200 or 205 or 210, then are you really going to get workhorse type of work? Well, Devon Achane said, okay, hold my beer. Bucky Irving said, hold my beer. Kyren Williams said, hold my beer. And we got a 6-pack of running backs that are good that didn't fit that mold. So we really need to kind of like crush that mold, toss it in the trash and say, okay, we need to learn from this.
People were making those comments when Jahmyr Gibbs was having his crazy Sunday night game in week 18. Same thing. D-Bro, what was your fantasy takeaway for the Atlanta Falcons who went 8-9 last year?
I am so not only excited because now we can stop all the talk of, is Drake London actually good at football? Because he is, and he proved it by catching 100 balls this year. But with the addition of Michael Penix, we could see Drake London take off, and we have not seen the full ceiling for Drake London. That's what I want everybody to take away from this. You saw really, really stinking good for Drake London in 2024. That is not his true ceiling. We could see that in 2025. And what we saw in the difference between Kirk Cousins and how that hampered and his health and his arm and all that kind of stuff hampered that offense versus what we saw with Michael Penix, we could see an even better Drake London in 2025. Like with Kirk Cousins, 10.7 ADOT, 2.24 yards per route run. He averaged 65 receiving yards per game. All of these metrics are really, really good. With Michael Penix, and people could say, oh, it's a small sample. It's a glorious sample. His ADOT went up to 12.5. He averaged 117 receiving yards per game. I get it's a 3-game sample. He still had 200-yard days out of those 3 games. 3.74 yards per route run. We get Drake London not just like eating up targets and gobbling up volume in that short to intermediate range, but we get him downfield, and we've seen Michael Penix willing to throw those type of balls to Drake London. Let's go, baby. 110 catches, top 3 wide receiver in 2025. My body is ready.
Is that a bold prediction, or is that you are ranking him as a top 3 receiver?
That's my bold prediction right now. Drake London right now in my early 2025 ranks. He's going to be top 6. I'm still kind of sifting through it, but he's going to be top 6, top 8.
Chase, Jefferson, Puka, CD.
He deserves to be in the conversation right next to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'll say that.
Okay. Fitz, what about you? You kind of reacted in a way in hearing D-Bro's ranking that makes me think you might be a little bit lower.
I'm a little bit lower. Like I've got him below Thomas and Neighbors, who I think are potentially pretty special. I think London could be special too. And I agree with D-Bro's enthusiasm about the ability of Michael Penix to unlock London fully. I'll try to do this without speaking ill of Kirk Cousins, because I think I've done enough of that already. But Penix is just, to watch that guy throw the ball is so much fun. Like, I mean, that guy just zips it. Like, he can spin it like nobody's business. And like, that's a big part of it. Like, to finally get the right quarterback for London, because obviously it was a struggle with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke or whoever it was in 2023. And then, sort of over the hill Kirk Cousins in 2024. Finally, we saw what he can do with a dude who's got crazy arm talent. I'm looking forward to London's output in 2025 as well.
Also, contract season for Drake London. Let's go, baby.
Oh, wow. They might want to take care of that this offseason.
They should learn the lesson of that the Cincinnati Bengals did not learn and say, yeah, we probably need to do this for you reset your market.
Yeah. If you want a chance to win a signed TJ Hawkinson Vikings helmet for free courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com. All you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros on all of those platforms. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. All right, the Carolina Panthers, 5-12, a more fun back half of the season for them than the first half. Fitz, what was your takeaway for Carolina?
Yeah, before I say what it is, can I ask, does the winner get a few long strands of TJ Hawkinson's hair to go with the helmet as kind of a value add?
Debra would definitely be in on it if they did.
Oh, we got ball jokes, huh? Okay. All right. I see how it is. Okay.
All right. My take for the Panthers is that Dave Canales is indeed a QB whisperer and has helped turn Bryce Young into a legitimate NFL starter. Just a terrible start to the season for Bryce Young, benched after 2 games, comes back as the starter in week 7 and, okay at first, and then it just got better and better from there. By the end of the season, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, in his last 3 starts. I don't know if he's going to be a star like next year or ever, but he is at least a credible NFL quarterback that the Panthers can start to build around. And, maybe a couple years down the road, they're going to realize he's not the guy to take them to the promised land, but there is hope now. And you can thank Dave Canales for that. And there's also going to be hope for Carolina pass catchers next year. And I'm even kind of high on Debro's guy, Jalen Coker, for next year.
So I was going to kind of ask, what's the larger takeaway for you for fantasy purposes? Is it Bryce Young is a viable, if not maybe even good, super flex quarterback to have on your team next year? Or is it Bryce Young is not a fantasy viable quarterback, but he is good enough to make Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen, Chuba Hubbard viable?
Yeah, Bryce Young is a worthwhile super flex quarterback. I don't think anyone wants to have him as their QB1 in a 1 QB league. But there are some leagues where, because of the format, whether it's, a really deep league, some leagues it's actually sensible to draft a backup quarterback. And I think in those leagues, Bryce Young is worth having as a backup. Mainly more about him not being a drag on the offense as a whole. Young's competence is good for Chuba Hubbard. It's going to be good for Jalen Coker and whoever else is there. We'll see about Xavier Legette. I'm not entirely sold there. Maybe we see a breakout for Jatavian Sanders next year. Like Young's improvement gives me a little bit of optimism for JT Sanders. So we'll see. But we don't have to worry about, how I talked on the AFC South show about the Titans offense being a sinkhole and probably continuing to be a sinkhole in 2025. I don't think we have the same fears with the Panthers.
Bryce Young's bye week was week 11. From that point on, do you have a guess of where he finished amongst quarterbacks?
I had it pulled up and I was just about to bring it up. Yep. Fitz, take a guess. Weeks 12 through 18, fantasy points per game. Where was Bryce Young?
For ranking?
I promise you're going to guess
11?
Higher.
No kidding. Not top 6.
Nope. QB 9.
So he's 9 in points per game. He was QB 6 actually in overall total points. So obviously some players had their own bye weeks and injuries and stuff where didn't play in week 18, but total scoring QB 6 per game QB 9 since his bye week in week 11. So maybe even selling him short. His weekly finish at the position: QB 14, 8, 20, 18, 2, 19, and 1. So it was quite a finish from him, and maybe is even being sold short a little, calling him, more of a passable, QB2 option. I'm not saying he's a guy who should be a QB1, obviously, but he played well. I mean, that's certainly better than I expected. What really helped, though, is the rushing touchdowns, and I'm very curious to see if that ends up being sustainable for him or not. He's not the body type you might typically think of as this guy's going to add a ton of rushing value, but he had 5 rushing touchdowns in the last 6 weeks. That goes a long way. Certainly.
Oh, definitely.
Helps
And
a lot.
best of all, I got to wipe the egg off my face for having drafted Bryce Young ahead of CJ Stroud in 2 dynasty rookie drafts.
I think a lot of people are feeling that way.
I feel a little bit better about that now. Don't know if it was the right call, but I do feel better.
Even the purists too, if they want to say like, well, we didn't play week 18 and that monster game. Even if you look just weeks 12 through 17, Bryce Young, QB 12 in fantasy points per game.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
any just quick thoughts on him overall, D-Bro?
no, I mean, I think he's definitely a really strong super flex quarterback. Now I think that obviously we're talking about the rushing production is helping him a ton as far as in his fantasy outlook. So I think some of that's going to come back. So looking at the lens of, okay, as a strong QB2 that can give me spike weeks for QB1, and depending on what this offense looks like, because again, like this offense is trying to find its way, man. Like, what does this offense look like in year 2 of Canales with Chuba doing the things that he's done, with Xavier Legette hopefully taking a step forward, or heck, we could talk about the GOAT, Jalen Coker, who has been out-targeting their first-round pick, Xavier Legette, on a weekly basis. Can he step into that Adam Thielen role in 2025? We shall see.
D-Bro, let's go to your New Orleans Saints, 5-12 as well, for your takeaway.
I don't know if I want to claim them anymore. I've kind of disavowed, like, my fandom of this team is done until Derek Carr is gone. And when we get to a point where I can find legitimacy of this roster to root for, my fandom is on hiatus right now. But to that point, a move that I didn't agree with, but New Orleans made it anyway. I'm not the GM. Extending Alvin Kamara, I think we've gotten to a point with Alvin Kamara at this point where he's a volume vacuum, man. And at this point, like, I faded him in ranks, and was it going to be Kendre Miller? Was it going to be age? Was it going to be all these different things? It hasn't mattered. Alvin Kamara in the last 2 years, RB3 and RB5 in fantasy points per game. He is going to soak up volume, and that's going to carry him to yet another RB1 season in 2025, whether we like it or not.
So Fitz, as somebody who's not a fan of New Orleans, or I should say not a fan of the Saints, I don't know how you feel about the city, who's not...
we could have a bigger conversation about being a fan of New Orleans all the time.
I've never been to New Orleans. It is very high on the list of American cities that I have not been to that I want to.
All right, we're booking plane tickets right now.
I'm hoping we can get a team trip there. Well, we have our team trip to Vegas next month. That'll be my first time there. I'm hoping maybe next year we can help me cross New Orleans off the list. But
hopefully we get you bailed out in time to have the team trip to be in New Orleans the year after that. So
yeah, but as somebody who's not colored by your opinion of the Saints as a fan, Fitz, what do you think about this take from D-Bro about Alvin Kamara and just the volume being enough to not really worry about anything else?
First of all, I haven't been to New Orleans either, which seems like a great oversight. I love Cajun
that
food.
Is stunning to me, honestly.
I know, man. I got to get me some hurricanes and beignets. So
I am messaging the powers that be, New Orleans in next year's team trip. Got it.
Yes. Done. So no, I pretty much agree with D-Bro. I think it'll actually be best for Alvin Kamara if the Saints run it back with Derek Carr, because Derek Carr is so eager to dump off to Alvin Kamara and keep his, like, the ticket for Alvin Kamara to be an RB1 again is the passing game usage, and for him to have another 70, 75, 80 catch season, which I think he could very well do with Derek Carr. If they somehow land some like hypermobile quarterback who isn't going to dump off that much, that's when you need to pull the ripcord on Alvin Kamara. But considering how cap strapped the Saints are, as per usual, pretty unlikely I think they change direction at quarterback. So I do think Kamara probably needs a tag team partner on early downs. I don't know if Kendre Miller is that guy. They might have to go fishing in the draft again for a new potential heir apparent at running back. But yeah, I mean, I've no issues with the take that Alvin Kamara is going to be an RB1 again.
Where will you be planning on drafting Alvin Kamara?
I think I do have him right on the RB1, RB2 border.
But like, what round sounds right?
Maybe 3, somewhere in the third.
I was gonna say 4.
Oh,
he gets
4.
surprised me if he dropped into the 4th.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to last to the 4th in too many leagues. Certainly not in too many home leagues.
I mean, he's not a stereotypical RB dead zone like name, but that is, kind of the range that
especially
we're talking about.
PPR leagues, man, with the value he brings as a pass catcher.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll wrap up the NFC South there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please be sure to check out all of our divisional takeaway episodes. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For Fitz and Debro, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.